Welcome to TV Africa News. Thank you so much for joining us and Nora being part of us. This is Africa Today. My name is Madaraka Jura, but first are the headlines. Government to launch Education Plus initiative to fight early marriages, gender-based violence. Kenya marks 59 years of self-rule. Hundreds demonstrate against the UN in Sudan. In a sports news today, Igbo put bags brace as Uganda dispatch Rwanda. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. We'll start with one of our top stories. Government, in partnership with the United Nations, will today launch the Education Plus initiative, a move aimed at accelerating actions among adolescent girls, young women and boys to act as agents of change to prevent HIV and reduce teenage pregnancies. The initiative will help to fight early marriages, gender-based violence, with access to and completion of secondary school education as an entry point. We have the report. According to Katie Lamaro, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education and Sports, the launch will be presided over by the First Lady and Minister of Education and Sports, Janet Kataha Museveni, at Mengo Senior Secondary School. The Education Plus initiative is convened by 5 UN agencies such as UNAIDS, UNFPA, UN Women, UNICEF, and UNESCO. In a statement, Lamaro said the high risk of acquiring HIV is just one of the many threats adolescent girls and young women face to their health, safety, dignity, and life aspirations. While women and girls are biologically more susceptible to HIV than men and boys, Lamaro said unequal gender power dynamics and harmful gender norms are the root cause, compounded by intersecting forms of discrimination. She said the Education Plus initiative is a multi-sectoral initiative that brings together ministries of education and sports, health, gender and labor, and social development, local government, and other MDAs to focus on essential elements of what every adolescent girl and young woman is entitled to for effectively transitioning to adulthood. Away from that, the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Honorable Matia Kasaija, has emphasized that Uganda's economy is steadily rising from the devastating effects of COVID-19, despite the current rising inflation. Now, Kasaija spoke at the 2022-2023 National Budget Conference between the Ministry of Finance and Uganda Parliamentary Press Association at Hotel Africana in Kampala. Now, Lugo has the details.
The annual inflation rate in Uganda rose to 3.2% in February of 2022 from 2.7% in the prior month, reaching its highest point since July of 2020. This was brought about by the rise in commodity prices. Speaking during the 2022-2023 Financial National Budget Conference between the Ministry of Finance and Uganda Parliamentary Press Association, Uganda's Minister of Finance says the trend is driven by forces beyond the country's borders, including the war between Russia and Ukraine.
I'm urging you, the first thing that you must make sure if the economy is going to go, if people are going to live a happy life, property, security, and life of security. And that is handled by security. So if you want to say, which would be the first thing when we are getting money? Which is security. Without security, everything else can go.
According to the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, the price of cooking oil increased by 21% between December 2021 and February 2022, and the annual rise was 77.6%. In February, a laundry bar soap cost 20% more than in December and almost 50% more than 1 year earlier. The petrol price surged by 15.3% in 3 months and by 34% in 12 months. However, Kasaija said the economy continues to show signs of recovery following the easing of the lockdown.
So please tell everybody that Kasaija said the economy is alive. It's not dead, it is alive. Have you heard it? It may not be moving like it was moving before, but it is what? It's alive.
Uganda's public debt has risen to 73.8 trillion shillings, according to provisional figures at the Bank of Uganda, up to the month of October 2021. By the end of June 2021, the Ministry of Finance Planning and Economic Development reported that the debt had gone up by more than a quarter to 16 trillion shillings over the previous year. Kasaija advised Ugandans to use techniques available to generate wealth.
Let us focus on what we are doing. Use these new techniques now to generate wealth. To generate wealth, both for yourselves, but also for others.
Over 1.2 trillion shillings was used to fight COVID-19 for both medical and non-medical intervention. Kasaija noted that the 2022-2023 budget is set to address the health and economic challenges presented by COVID-19.
Moving on, in our top stories, the Ministry of Agriculture, in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, have organized the first National Educational Agriculture Show under the symposium Farming Today for a Prosperous Future, with the target of involving the youth in agricultural activities. Take a look at the details.
Uganda is an agro-based state with over 70% of its population employed in the agricultural sector. However, the youth, who accounts to 77% of the country's population, remains less involved in agriculture, hence its underdevelopment. Now, for government to get the youth involved in the sector, it has organized the first agricultural education show under the theme Farming for a Prosperous Future. Over 10 universities, primaries and secondary schools from 20 sub-regions across the country are expected to compete, as explained by the State Minister for Agriculture, Fred Wino Chakulaga.
We expect that this show that is going to be organized annually, every year, will accord a platform that will be used for knowledge transfer and skilling of younger people, will be used as a demonstration and also as a practical training forum, and also a platform for youth innovation competitions, debates.
In his address to the media at Uganda Media Center in Kampala, the State Minister for Agriculture, Fred Wino Chakulaga, said that the symposium will provide a platform for continuous knowledge transfer and skilling of young people through practical demonstrations, practical training, youth innovation competitions, debates, and youth in agriculture-oriented policy dialogues.
My ministry, working with the Ministry of Education and Sports, together National Farmers Federation, UNAFE, we have come together as 3 partners to organize the first National Agricultural Education Show. The purpose of organizing this agriculture education show is to target the youth, the majority of whom are currently excluded from the agriculture sector. Agriculture is the biggest employer in the country. However, when you look at the average, when you look at the age range for the people that are involved in agriculture, you'll find that age 25 and below are not very much involved. And those that are involved.
According to Wino Chakulaga, the old curriculum could not equip learners with thorough skills and knowledge to become innovative in order to create jobs, but rather teaches more theoretical work than practical skills. This and more others called for this symposium.
80% of Ugandans in this country either rely on one or the other on agriculture. They depend on agriculture, and it's the biggest employer, as earlier mentioned. Uganda has the youngest population. The youngest population in Uganda today, if the population of Uganda is about 45 million, almost 30 million are below the age of 30. and they are youthful, energetic, and they eat on a daily basis. We ask for food in schools. We have school meals programs. But all these programs require food, and this food should come from who?
On the other hand, the Commissioner for Education explained why the symposium has been organized now and the participants. And
thank you so much, reporter. We take a quick break. We shall come back with the international news. Welcome back for the break. You're still watching TV Africa, the right to know. In the international news today, Kenya celebrated on Wednesday 59 years of self-rule. Thousands had gathered at the Uhuru Gardens of Nairobi to mark Madaraka Day. We have the details.
President Uhuru Kenyatta said that Madaraka Day is significant in their history because it is on this day in June 1963 that their founding fathers of their nation replaced the outgoing colonial government and formed the first indigenous government of Kenya. It is because a large crowd, dignitaries such as the first couple of the Republic of Sierra Leone, the diplomatic corps, Vice President William Ruto and politician Raila Odinga, that the president addressed the nation. Uhuru Kenyatta presided over the Kenya Defence Force Parade in Nairobi, where celebrations resumed this year in all counties. For his last ceremony in office, Kenyatta invited his people to consider stability when voting for the next election. President Kenyatta can no longer stand for re-election, but his deputy Ruto and his now ally Odinga are just two among a record number of aspiring candidates.
Away from that, Guinea's ruling junta has rejected a UN call to lift a ban on political demonstrations, insisting protests should only be allowed during the election period in 3 years' time. Now, the military overthrew President Alpha Conde in September and last month declared a ban on public demonstrations before a return to civilian rule, which it says will be in 3 years. Take a look at this story. The UN's Human Rights High Commission on Monday called for the ban to be revoked, but the junta rejected the appeal late Tuesday. Hundreds of people died during violent protests that erupted during the Conde era, the junta noted. The junta said it had only set up bodies where contradictions and misunderstandings can be debated quite serenely. Political parties are becoming increasingly vocal in their protests against the junta's rule and what they say is crackdown on freedoms. The National Front for the Defense of the Constitution, a coalition that led months of anti-Conde protests in 2019 and 2020, issued a statement on social media accusing the junta of showing a dictatorial attitude. It called on the public to mobilize for the imminent resumption of peaceful and civil demonstrations to prevent the confiscation of power and demand a swift return to public order. The junta is made up of army officers led by Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya. Moving on, in international news, hundreds of Sudanese protesters rallied Wednesday in front of the United Nations mission in the capital Khartoum to call for its dismissal. The protesters, including supporters of Islamist groups critical of efforts by UN envoy Volker Perthes to resolve the political crisis in the country since last year's military coup.
The rallies came as the UN Security Council is considering extending the mission's mandate beyond June 3rd. Many accuses the envoy of interfering in Sudanese internal affairs. Sudanese protester Muhammad Said threatened that Volker must leave today before tomorrow, adding that if he doesn't, they will make him leave by force. Ahmed Ali, another Sudanese protester, claimed that Volker came to involve parties of the Forces of Freedom and Change back in the Sudanese society, which is against those parties. The UN mission, along with the African Union and regional bloc IGAD, have been pushing to facilitate Sudanese-led talks to resolve the crisis. On Sunday, military leader Abdel Fattah al-Burhan lifted the state of emergency imposed since the coup to set the stage for meaningful dialogue that achieves stability for the transitional period. The decision came after a meeting with senior military officials that also recommended that people detained under an emergency law be freed.
Dozens of Africans seeking asylum continue to come outside the United Nations Refugee Agency offices, demanding that they be relocated to other countries, claiming they have been victims of xenophobia in South Africa. Some of these refugees who are demanding relocation are from Burundi and the Democratic Republic of Congo and are pushing to be repatriated to their respective countries. Prior to this, the group has been living in Lindela Repatriation and Detention Center, where they complained that the living conditions were very poor. Johnny Moss, an asylum seeker, said that they have the right as refugees and to know the agreement between the government of South Africa and UNHCR. The UNHCR said it was investigating their cases, including their initial places where they had taken refuge at Lindela. The spokesperson at the UNHCR, Buchizia Maseteka, said resettlement to other countries was not possible. Home Affairs spokesperson Siyabulela Koza said that the 85 people outside the UNHCR, 22 have since opted for voluntary repatriation to their countries and are being assisted to do so. Africa Today takes a quick break. She'll come back with business, health and sports. Welcome back from the break. You're still watching TV Africa, the right to know. In a business news today, it's devastating outlook for millions of people affected by drought in Somalia and was the warning left by the UN's humanitarian coordinator for Somalia. Now, the alert came on Tuesday as officials visited a camp for internally displaced people in the Baidoa district.
Adam Abdel Mola, UN humanitarian coordinator for Somalia, said that the situation is extremely dire and grim, whereby 7.1 million people are going to be affected by this drought situation before the end of this year. He added that unless they scale up and set up their response, unfortunately, many people, including at least 370,000 children, will perish before the end of the month of June, which is next month. Somalia's newly appointed Special Presidential Envoy for Drought Response appealed for help to the international community. Abdirahman Abdishakur said that he was there to mobilize as much as possible resources and coordinate the effort of humanitarian assistance. Somalia faces a growing crisis resulting from the combination of drought and the effects of the war in Ukraine. Nearly all the wheat sold in Somalia comes from Ukraine and Russia, which have halted exports through the Black Sea since Moscow launched an offensive against its neighbor on February 24th.
Talking matters health, in Senegal, President Macky Sall has launched the works of the first water desalination plant. The aim of the project is to increase the water supply to the capital Dakar, which is facing shortages.
President Macky Sall explained that it was all the more vital because the demographic situation combined with a real estate boom and the rapid development of economic activities have led to an overexploitation of local water resources, thus accelerating the rise of salt water in the Cape Verde Peninsula. Despite opposition from local fishermen and environmentalists, the project is going ahead due to growing demographic pressures on the capital. The president added that the state has taken all the necessary measures to ensure optimal control of the environmental and social impacts of this project in the spirit of the Sustainable Development Objectives, in particular Objective number 6, which concerns drinking water and sanitation. The desalination plant is part of a vast plan of improvements aimed at making the country more competitive.
sports news today, Equipart was the heroine for Uganda as the Crested Cranes overcame Rwanda at Sekafa Senior Women's Championship that got underway on Wednesday at Fufa Technical Center in Njeru.
The Lady Doves FC forward scored a goal in either half to help Uganda earn a 2-0 win over Rwanda. Her first on the day arrived at the 36th minute, firing into an empty net before getting the second 2 minutes after the break. In a game watched by a sizable crowd, Rwanda and Uganda matched for the opening half an hour playing with intensity. With the skipper Shadia Nancha failing to beat a late fitness test, Margaret Namirimu of She Corporate was called up to fill the void, partnering Aisha Nantongo at the heart of defense. Equipart broke the deadlock in the 36th minute, firing into an empty net, capitalizing on a mistake by goalkeeper Flavia Itangishaka. Itangishaka was late to intercept a defense-splitting pass from Aisha Nachibuka, and the goalkeeper, instead of clearing the ball, took away Shamira Naluja, and the ball fell to Equipart, who did no mistake to fire home. Burundi, who are also in the same group with Uganda, won their game 3-0 against Djibouti. Group A will resume on Friday with Uganda facing Djibouti, while Rwanda will be up against Burundi.
Congratulations to the Crested Cranes, and we wish them the best in every match they have. It is at this particular time that I thank you for being part of us and always joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We shall keep updating you. It is TV Africa, the right to know.